Come on down to Kunkleman Chevrolet. We now have Jaguars. We have Panther bodies. We have Fox bodies. We have Cougars. Whether you just inherited a fat stack of California cabbage from a dearly departed relative, or you just got your first big boy job at your dad's paper refinery and need to show former classmates you're making career money at 19, let us talk you into something unreasonably fast for just $99,999.29.25. Any make, any model, it's all the exact same price at Kunkleman Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, Oldsmobile, Suzuki, Harley, Davidson. We have used cars, we have luxury cars, we have LS swap power wheels, we have divorce. Infidelity is a choice, Rebecca, and you gave me no option but to choose it. Cure your loneliness with a weapons-grade dose of acceleration and treat the turnpike as your own personal Nürburgring. Because speeding tickets are more affordable than ever and the points just fall off like brisket from the bone. At least that's what our friend who took the LSAT tells us. Lose your right to federal assistance at Kunkleman Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, Tesla, Duesenberg, Pete Davidson. Come down to the only unregistered used car dealership with supercharged power and sales associates with names like Jason, Raymond, and Shane. Come get these withering handshakes and coffee so hot you can't drink it, with powdered creamer so lumpy it rests at the bottom of the cup like sunken treasure. Find the X and dig up savings at Kunkleman Chevrolet. Buick, GMC, Hyundai, Suzuki, Kia, Jaguar, but not Ford or Land Rover. When you're gone off that perk 30 and have a handle of wild turkey and the spousal support check comes through in the mail, you just got a hit on eHarmony, and insurance approved your Cialis prescription, that's when you know it's time to treat yourself to a Jaguar F-Type so you can join your problematic army of professional condom forgetters. That price is so rock bottom they bust through the Earth's core. Come out the other side and go sky high again. We know where you live! At Kunkleman Chevrolet, but with Riz. There's no half-assing here. This is double cheeks, fully loaded, ready to make it clap like the plane just landed. So clear your search history and burn anything you don't want used against you, and come on down to Kunkleman Chevrolet. Buick, GMC, Oldsmobile, Land Rover, but not Jaguar. Ford, Suzuki, Ford, Tesla, Jaguar, but never Land Rover, Chrysler, Ridge Racer, Ford a third time. Off Route 425-2529, Harrisburg. 2014 Jaguar F-Type. I bought a cool car to reel in the hot babes, but it just ended up being a bat signal for office managers. Ah yes, a Jaguar F-Type. If it ain't bespoke, don't fix it. This is the kind of car that attracts devotion like loose bills to a church collection plate. Hey Dave, not to turn away a paying customer, but weren't you just in here for an oil change like 2 weeks ago? Yeah, but it's looking a little dark and I don't trust it. And look, there's a lot here worth worshipping, but my goal is to figure out if this is a case of style over substance, and if so, how much. And if it's not a boutique experience for a guy who unironically uses the term grind set while finding time to spend half his day golfing, then I've got a lot of reconsidering to do. So if you've been here before, welcome back. And if you're new, well, I'm the Roman. This is Race to the Bottom, a spin-off of regular car reviews. And today, I continue my search for the worst car in the world by driving a 2014 Jaguar F-Type. Yeah, I know, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Bewitching, driving is enriching. Fire up the jack and get the whole block twitching. Do you need a Porsche Cayman? No, I'm fine here. Got an F-Type to keep accelerated for years. 2014 Jaguar F-Type. Hop in, bro. PennDOT just paved the roads and we gotta go break 'em in. Jaguar F-Type. The top and the windows could both be up and I'd still be able to hear the Jordan Peterson podcast from my Camry 3 cars down. Okay, so I've made it known that I'm not really a speed guy, but damned if this doesn't have me reconsidering that position. And no, it's not exactly a huge surprise that a well-maintained supercharged convertible roadster thing would be enjoyable to drive, even as the internet seems fairly divided on this car for everything from reliability reasons to notions that it doesn't live up to its E-Type heritage, or stand against competitors like the Lexus LC500, or the BMW M4, or the Z4, or insert Porsche here. But I really couldn't care less about any of that because all I really have to go off of is my own experience, and in my opinion, this car is great. Obnoxiously great, actually. It's great in a way that breeds resentment. It's the equivalent of spending weeks researching, writing, recording, and editing a video just to get 2,000 views, and then some rando wipes his bare ass with a Belgian waffle and gets 3.2 million. It's that type of resentment that compels you to search for deeper meanings in things that aren't really that deep. I drove this car, I found myself enjoying it, and then I began looking for a reason why, because it can't just be that it looks cool and it goes fast. It can't be that simple, can it? The engine here is the 3-liter supercharged Jaguar AJ126 V6, making 340 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque, and EPA estimates place fuel economy at 20 city, 28 highway, and 23 combined. You could daily this, but I don't know that it's necessarily a daily driver in any sort of traditional sense, because it doesn't really present as a year-round car, which is why it was so odd to find one up in this general area. I never see Jaguars on the road up here, around here, this general area. This is for top-down weather and long stretches of unbothered road mixed with winding pathways. This car wants you in those twisty corners every bit as much as it wants those highway pulls. This is a car with the attitude of a pet nagging to be fed after you've already fed them. You know, come on, man, let me go fast. You call that a highway pull? Come on, I'm still hungry. Also, I know you just let me in, but can you let me back out? I gotta take a dump. And so you give in, and you suddenly forget yourself, and oh no, here comes red line. You know what this engine is? It's that uncle who shadow boxes you every time he sees you, and you keep telling him to stop, but you're giggling so he doesn't take it seriously. And now you're starting to get irritated, but you can't really do anything about it because he's your mom's brother, and you don't want to talk back, lest the shadow hands become corporeal. I guess what I'm trying to say is that driving this car can get out of hand in a hurry. Even more than a lot of fast cars I've driven, it's so easy to lose track of just how fast you're going. 1 minute, you're barely above the speed limit, and then the next, you're flirting with a federal charge for reckless endangerment. Now, from what I've read, this has an automatic speed limiter feature, so you can set a speed that cannot be exceeded, whether it's because you're loaning the car to some random jerk to review for his YouTube channel, or because you can't afford to get another speeding ticket, but you don't trust the connection between your brain and your lead foot to be strong enough to stop it from happening. It's a helpful feature to have, I would imagine, but it's also difficult to conceive of a Jaguar enthusiast ever actually using it for themselves. Really, it seems like the sort of thing you use to avoid waking the Tri-County area with the sounds of this car, you know, the motor, the exhaust, all of it. It can be too tempting to let this rip a long, loud one in places you thought were unpopulated until it's too late. Maybe it's just one of life's lessons. So your eardrums are blown out like a backside after Valentine's dinner. It happens to all of us sometime, you know. At some point, you're inevitably going to rev this thing to a point where you get those Morse code popping sounds. And oh dear, there I go making Jiffy Pop again. You know what a turbo sounds like, whatever. Alright, let's talk design. I like the power top. I like the pop-out door handles. I like the power mirrors. And absolutely none of it is revolutionary, of course. None of it matters, really. But it's all part of the package, you know, it's part of the presentation. I will say that the lack of storage room isn't exactly surprising, but even by my low standards, I'm kind of shocked by how tight of a squeeze this is for anything but groceries from the 10 items or less line. But make no mistake, whether it's the wheels or the paint or the amenities, or the fact that it's not covered in scratches and road salt, people will mistake this for something far more expensive than it already is. And these retailed at $70,000-ish, brand new. You're paying a huge premium for what you could arguably get for less money with something like a Porsche Cayman. Maybe not a lot less money, and, you know, if you're going into the dealership with Jaguar money, you probably aren't worried about the 5 or 10 grand difference, but I don't know, maybe you are. And I could see how a Porsche would be far more attractive than this if you're looking for all the same things in terms of speed, prestige, and appearances. Yet I would also argue that this feels perpetually nice, all while never coming across as something that's putting on airs to try and fit in with its European rivals. There's a weird outlaw character to this, like a backwater moonshiner who just hit the lottery, and now has to be tolerated in polite society. It feels European by way of Western carelessness. It's reckless refinement. Never mind that it's from an ostensibly British car maker that's now owned by an Indian car maker. It doesn't feel stodgy and inaccessible, and I'm sure there's a learning curve to getting the most out of this driving experience, but there's really nothing to learn to get one hell of a fun time out of it. It's like it's just telling you, hey dude, go fast. You know, who cares how tightly you take those corners? Who cares how graceful you look while you're doing it? Just drive and go long stretches without looking at yourself in the rearview mirror to confirm how cool you look with the wind combing through what's left of your hair. Let me, the Jaguar F-Type, let me burn a memory into that worm-ridden apple you call a brain. Welcome to the world, motherfucker. Don't get lost. But I will say, for as nice as this is externally, I don't really care for the interior. The seats are nice, but, well, maybe it's just my awkward proportions, but I never could find a natural position. I tried to sit as upright as possible, all proper posture and everything, yet it always felt like I was sat low, or too far from the wheel, or too cramped in, or, I can't imagine this would be ideal for anyone over, say, 6'1", and even that might be generous. I mean, it's not like you're necessarily driving this with your knees or anything, but I just don't imagine that it's going to be the most comfortable ride. And on the minor end of nitpicks, I didn't really love the dash and console either. I mean, it's fine. There's nothing really wrong with it. Again, it's more personal taste than anything. But it's just the little things, like how difficult the screen can be to read on a day like this with the top down and the sun out, or how harsh the interior trim can sometimes feel so that it's like you're always touching something stiff, like the first take at a bukkake. But all of this is kind of low on the list of issues on what's a pretty good car in every other respect. And you know, it should be, considering how long Jaguar spent trying to make some version of this car happen. The history here goes back further than its debut at the 2012 Paris Motor Show. In fact, the F-Type sort of goes back to 1980, as Jaguar set out to modernize the E-Type, only to throw in the towel at the turn of the decade, as we entered the 90s with no F-Type in sight. 5 years would pass, and the brain trust felt it might be time to try that F-Type again. But by this point, they didn't want it stealing the shine from the XJ90. So the can got kicked down the road another couple of years, at which point a concept was presented for something a little closer to what we would eventually get, with a 3-liter V6 and a sleeker body. But again, the car would hit a speed bump on the road to development, and this time it was tragedy that intervened, rather than the demands of business and profit. Long story short, the man in charge of this project was Jaguar's head of design, a man by the name of Jeff Lawson. He had been the one in charge of all of this, spearheading the project and shaping the vision alongside a really talented team of designers. This was the man behind some of Jaguar's best-known cars, owing to his start in 1984 as Director of Styling. He brought us the XJ220 supercar, the XJ Luxury Saloon, and the 1998 S-Type midsize saloon, just to name a few. He was instrumental in helping the company out of the desperate hole they were in prior to Ford purchasing the company in 1999, which is why it was a shame that he didn't really get to see the direction the company would take in the 21st century, for good or ill. On June 24, 1999, Lawson passed away suddenly after a stroke. He was only 54 years old. And it was this tragic loss that prompted his successor, Ian Callum, to finish the concept for the F-Type and bring it to the 2000 Detroit Auto Show. People seemed excited about it, but it ended up getting shelved again after Callum realized, as he would tell TopGear.com in 2014, quote, that by the time it had gone through all its legal and feasibility requirements, it could look quite ordinary." End quote. And this is the case more often than you might think in the auto industry. My video on the complete history of the Corvette goes into excruciating detail on just how long various people within General Motors were trying to get a mid-engine Corvette made, and the forces working against that ever happening, until it finally did. Because a good product, or at least a product people desperately want to experience, will inevitably see the light of day in some fashion or another. And this was true of the F-Type, which went through one last permutation as the CX-16 concept in 2011, evoking memories of a 60s E-Type and boasting the kind of diminutive stature not seen since the XK-120. It was a small boy, but it had room to grow, and it was the concept from which this F-Type would seemingly derive, as the F-Type convertible arrived for model year 2013, with supercharged power but lacking the manual transmission initially promised by Ford for the 2000 concept. Not that it matters, since Ford had sold Jaguar to Tata Motors by this point, but what's interesting is that this is one of those rare cases where I don't necessarily dislike the paddle shifting. Sure, no clutch, not a manual, I know. But this 8-speed automatic transmission moves through the gears with precision and urgency, providing a sense of more direct control that's typically lacking in a traditional automatic. It simulates that manual feeling pretty well at times, and it pairs well with this engine. No, it's not the V8, but I would be somewhat surprised if the differences were vast enough to make anybody think less of what this actually does. And yet, for every amazing car in this world, there's some guy who's already sick of driving it. But there's also something grounding in that, right? Because you're reminded that a thing can just be a thing. It doesn't have to continuously live up to whatever you dreamed it to be in order to prove its worth. Because even the greatest car in the world becomes commonplace if you drive it for long enough. But it becomes commonplace in a way that's familiar, in a way that feels like home. And that's the beauty of cars and car ownership. So even while I may say I resented this car, I can't say that's how I still feel about it now. I mean, resentment is just an unmet expectation, right? But it can also be an expectation that isn't met in the way you were anticipating. I resented this car for making me think there needed to be a deeper explanation for why I liked it. Because it couldn't be that simple, could it? There has to be some sort of hidden depth here, but there really isn't. It looks cool, and it goes fast. It's not that deep. It never had to be. So, this is going in the top 5, but where? Well, I don't actually want to get rid of the 2008 Silverado, but it's at the bottom of the list, which means if I add this to the top 5, it has to go. So, unfortunately, this is the end of the road for that Silverado as it drops off the list. Now, where will the Jag slot in? For me personally, and I don't know how many people ever agreed with me ranking it that high in the first place, but I think this is taking the Saab's spot. So the 2014 Jaguar F-Type is now sitting at the number 2 spot, just under the number 1 ranked Lexus SC400, and above the now number 3 Saab 9.5 Sport Combi, my sentimental pick. You know, maybe it wasn't the greatest car in the world, but I really enjoyed that for sentimental reasons. Followed by the Golf GTI at number 4, and the manual Acura TSX rounding out the top 5. I'd like to thank Sam, our volunteer, who I oddly didn't mention before this point, but I also did his Jaguar X-Type like 5 years ago, and I really appreciate him coming through and allowing me this opportunity. With that said, I'm still searching for that white whale, that car so bad even I can't find anything to like about it. So if you have a car that can win the race to the bottom, email me at regularcarstheroman@gmail.com. Right now, we can only accept people willing to drive to us in southeastern Pennsylvania, but drop me a line. And if you like the show, consider leaving a comment, a like, sharing it with someone you know who might enjoy it, or subscribing. And if you want to support the channel in a bigger way, consider joining our Patreon. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your week. Quiet while I'm driving home in this car I own. I can lie, say I like to go fast, like to go fast.